ya atmada balada yasya vishwa upasate prashisang yasya devaha yasya chayamritam yasya mrityuh kasmai devaya habisha vidhemaha. He who is the giver of spiritual knowledge and strength, whom the world worships, whose command all learned men obey, whose shelter is immortality, whose shadow is death, he it is to whom we offer our prayers. Good morning. Today, the title of our talk is Work, a Bridge Between the World and God. We all have seen a bridge. We walk over various bridges. We see some interesting pictures of bridges. But all bridges have one thing in common. They carry us from one side to the other. In our case, the bridge, the subject we are going to discuss today, has two ends. On one end, on one side, is the world, and on the other side is God. But what I just said just now is not our decision-making statement. Decisions depend on realization or understanding. As the understanding gets matured, our perceptions of things change, and our decisions change. But we have to start the discussion, so let us start with a discussion about one end of the bridge, that is the world. It seems that there is nothing more true than work or action in this world. In the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says that without karma, one cannot live for a moment. Nahi kaschit shanamapi jatu tishtatya karmakrit karyate hyavashah karma sarva prakriti jair gunahi. Verily, none can ever rest for even an instant without performing action. For all are made to act helplessly, indeed, by the gunas born of Prakriti. The tendency to act is inherent in all beings. The universe is a thing in motion. There is nothing that is not, in the eyes of modern science, kinetic. Similarly, in the sphere of life, there is nothing that is not active or doing work. The human life, however, seems to be on a different level from the vegetable and animal kingdoms. It is not possible to discuss profitably in the present state of our knowledge whether the laws of action we perceive to be working in the world of human beings are effective with regard to animal and vegetable life. For example, can we say with any degree of certainty whether plants or animals act consciously as human beings do with reference to premeditated ends? Are not moral aims preeminently human? There is no evidence that ideas of God and soul, heaven and hell, good and bad actions are made anywhere except in human society. It is true that animals and plants share with them some of the biological characteristics that mark all life, such as nutrition, respiration, excretion, and reproduction, and the instinct of self-preservation. But in human beings, we find a unique development of brain power that has opened his eyes to spiritual problems that are unknown in other forms of life. As a consequence of his unique place in the scheme of things, humans are alone able to strive after spiritual ideals. Man alone is not content to live unto the day, but seeks to peep into the darkness of futurity, to delve into the past, and to decide his present course of conduct on such knowledge as he is able to gather of this universe of time and space and causation. But most of us knowledge most of our knowledge is concerned with the problem of getting on in this world. Science, politics, economics, and all other fields of human knowledge, except religion, confine men's attention to this life. But religion is unique in that it alone tries to solve some of the spiritual problems that beset every thoughtful person. Religion has taught a subtle thing about this life. You cannot steer your course in this life properly without taking into account its nature and the causes that brought it into being, that keep it going, and that brings it to an end. In Kathopanishad, we get a beautiful verse. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudho atma na prakashate drishyate tvagraya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshivi. The secret self in all existences does not manifest himself to the vision, yet is he seen by the seers of the subtle by a subtle and perfect understanding. This infinite Atman is hidden inside the heart of all, but it cannot be seen without effort. It is lying hidden, but it shall not be hidden all the time. You can make it manifest when your mind is more subtle, more pure, more concentrated. Then this truth shines in the mind. That is the challenge from the Upanishads. Fire is there beneath the ashes, but from outside you cannot see it, touch it, you have to find it. Nature has given the capacity in human beings to search for this supreme truth in this very life, not in heaven. Seeking the truth in the external world is physical science, and in the inner world, which is the science of religion, we have the organic capacity. There is no conflict between science and religion. Fields are maybe different, but seeking for the truth is the same. That infinite truth is behind the nature as well as behind each person. So this is the challenge to the modern human being. Can you realize this truth before this body falls away within this short period? The immortal behind the mortal, the infinite behind the finite, can you find out this truth? So the Upanishads summoned human beings to take this up in the context of life itself. We find in the Vedic era, people are searching for this truth by going into the forest or on a mountain. But now we find in the Gita for the first time why to go in the forest or to a monastery alone. Why you go here and there, you can realize the truth here in the busy course of your life. This supreme truth is not only the ascetic or the mystic. They are very small in number. There may be good people, great people, but they are very small in number. For millions of people, what is religion for them? The Bhagavad Gita says, what the sages had achieved, you can also achieve. You have that capacity. Gita says, I shall show you how to do it here. There is a science, there is a technique by which this divine can be realized in this very body. You need not wait for heaven. Arjuna, in Gita we found, he was a hero of action, a great warrior. And Krishna was a hero of vision, contemplation, and wisdom. This combination that we need. They were great friends. Krishna became the charioteer of Arjuna. When Arjuna first saw this battlefield, he did not want to work. We know work is terrible, and battlefield is most terrible. He became a little confused and wanted to become a monk. So Krishna conveys to him this beautiful philosophy of life, and to work. Don't run away from the battle. Don't run away from work. This is not the way. Face your challenges, face your difficulties, and overcome them. That is the real strength. Anyone can run away when they face difficulty. That's not proper for you. Klaibyang masmo gamah partha. Meet the challenge of life with a challenge of adequate philosophy. Adequate means it must be practical, it must be rational. That way Krishna advised Arjuna. From the Gita, we learned that the greatest emphasis was on the person at work. Most people are working for something or the other. Without work, there is nobody. So, how shall we utilize this work situation to educate ourselves, to improve ourselves, to enrich ourselves in a fundamental way? That's a serious question. Today's challenge to us is that work has become a drudgery. To all people, the creative element in work is completely lost. Work became just to income money, to enjoy pleasure, and nothing more. It has no spiritual value. Today, all spiritual value has been drained out of work. Man has been reduced to a machine. Modern materialism makes a person into a mere machine. But what is the fundamental differences between a man and a machine? This philosophy of work will make you achieve something that a machine cannot achieve. A person can work. A machine can do more work. That's why industry replaces men with machines. The first thing that we have to remember while working is that we have an inner life that no machine has. Humans have a spiritual dimension. In people, you will find an inwardness which you find slowly developing in evolution from the living cell up to the human level. In the sun, in moon or stars, there is no inner life. There is no inwardness. Everything is outward there. But when a living cell appeared, nature gave an inner direction of herself in that tiny cell. It is that inner dimension that becomes much more expressed when evolution rises to the human level. In man, there is an inner dimension that we should not forget while doing work. While doing work, we have to take this fact into account. What is this work is doing to us in my inner dimension? Most people do not think this question at all. Today, particularly in this highly mechanized civilization, this idea of the inner self is not understood by many, but that is the truth. Because we neglect this in our life, in the context of life and work, that inner life is all empty. Most human beings in this modern age and almost all ailments of the social body arise from that neglect of inner life. All these psychic distortions come from there. Therefore, by this great neglect, we have distorted the human psyche. We have distorted the social situation also. Today, we need a work philosophy that can correct this distortion, that can help us to restore our inner health and well-being, and make us richer and richer inwardly as we feel richer and richer outwardly in material wealth and pleasure, and so also be richer inside. As a machine is bringing prosperity to the outer world, but at the end of its life cycle, maybe after 5 years or 10 years, the machine becomes junk. We throw it away. If we don't have any inner philosophy, then the human being after work will become junk like a machine. Once our work is over here, we become a junk, old or discarded. We are considered useless or of little value unless we have an inner life. Each work, whatever we do, leaves an impression on the outer world. It is obvious. It brings some kind of change in the outer world. It changes the ratio of the energy system in the external world. Whatever work you do, you disturb the external world around you, either for good or bad. But when you work, you also disturb the energy system within yourself. You put a mark in the energy system within yourself. Your mind has been imprinted by the work you have done. It is the constant imprinting of the mind by the work that you do that constitutes your character, your personality, your being. We call those impressions in Sanskrit samskaras, which means innate impressions. An impression was given to the mind. A machine only have impressions outside, but in man, the impression is outside as well as inside, whether you like it or not. Now, if you do not recognize these inner impressions, you will not achieve life fulfillment, because it is this handling the inner impressions that lead you to joy, sorrow, success, failure, depression, all these evils you find today coming one after another. We are not taking account, it is happening because we are not taking account of this wonderful inner dimension of human life apart from the external dimension. So whenever you work, actually you are building your own character. Can you do it in a masterful way so that you can grow spiritually? Can you grow richer and richer within? Greater peace, greater tranquility, greater love, greater compassion? What impressions are you gathering in your mind? What samskaras, what tendencies are being created in your mind? Because ultimately it is this, what you call a bundle of tendencies in you, that constitutes your personality, your psychic bent, your way of dealing with the world later on. Everything depends upon this. So how to handle this is a big subject. By doing work, we generally achieve in the external world. We enrich our society through our work. I am a good farmer. I cultivate my fields. I produce a bumper harvest. I increase the economic strength for the community in which I live. That's a beautiful contribution that I make, and it is worth doing it. But while doing so, we have to check what kind of impressions the work is making on us. If that impression is good, you'll be fine. If that impression is bad, you'll be bad. You have to find the effect of this action on you by close scrutiny. This yoga of karma yoga helps us, the yoga of karma, the philosophy of action, helps us to understand this scrutiny and finally conditioning the mind deliberately by our own reason. That is why it is said that action should be guided by the buddhi or reason, said Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter. It is a technique of allowing Prakriti to do all the work and freeing the self progressively from involvement in work. This is what the Gita calls dexterity in work. Yogaha karmasu kaushalam. This dexterity lies in the mind and not in the external work. Karma yoga is actually a mental discipline. It is a discipline for controlling the mind. The mind can be controlled only by something higher, namely the buddhi or the intellect, which is the locus of pure will and pure consciousness. Unless this higher intuitive faculty is to some extent developed, it is not possible to do karma yoga. In fact, it is only when the buddhi emerges, comes forward, and takes charge of work that it becomes karma yoga. That is why the Gita calls in different way karma yoga as buddhi yoga also. Buddhi yukta jahatiha ubhe sukrita duskrite tasmat yogaya jujjasva yogaha karmasu kaushalam, said Sri Krishna. Endued with this evenness of mind, that samatta, one frees oneself in this life, alike from vice and virtue. Devote thyself, therefore, to this yoga. Yoga is the very dexterity of work. Here, this dexterity of work, it means it is the nature of work to produce bondage. Karma yoga is the dexterity of work because it not only robs work of its power to bind, but also transforms it into an efficient means of freedom. So using that buddhi yoga, we have to learn how to encounter the karma in our life. The Bhagavad Gita defines in different way the karma. In 8th chapter, I think, it says bhuta bhavat. It gave a different definition for the karma. We get different definition of karma in Bhagavad Gita. The one of that is bhuta bhavat bhavakaro visargah karma sangita. Bhuta bhavat kara means that which causes the existence and genesis of beings. Visarga means offering or sacrifice, is called karma. The imperishable is the Supreme Brahman. Its dwelling in each individual body is called adhyatma. It is definition of adhyatma. And then about karma, Bhagavan Sri Krishna said, the offering in sacrifice which causes the genesis and support of beings is called karma. Offering in sacrifice here includes all virtuous works. This definition is in accordance with the Vedic idea of yajna or sacrifice. Human beings offer ceremonial oblations to the gods, and the gods, thus appeased, grant and sustain the desired objects, progeny, health, prosperity, and so on. This idea of karma as sacrifice can be extended to all happenings in life also. Any creation and any sustenance needs sacrifice, expenditure of energy. We begin encountering karma as soon as we are born. A baby has to eat, breathe, move. At every stage of its growth, a giving away is involved. As the child ushers into manhood, more and more karma envelops him. Our whole life is indeed ceaseless action, tiresome but unavoidable. Retired from the waking, we goes to the dream state. As the dream man, he encounters dream activities. There too, he cannot escape karma. Even when he sleeps, there is karma. He has to take and spend oxygen. What happens to man happens to all living units, animals, birds, insects, plants. In their own worlds, the non-stop bustle of action goes on. So too, in the non-living entities, the mountains, the oceans, the stars, planets, galactic systems, the sun, which is responsible for all life, works by spending itself. In the vast process of nature, animate and inanimate, there is karma, sacrifice, spending away. The question naturally comes as to what propels karma. This ceaseless chain of action. The answer is desire. We read in Chandogya Upanishad that creation began from the desire of God, the one without a second, to be many. Of course, there is a difference between the desire of God and that of man. God instigates karma, manifested in the threefold process of Srishti, Sthiti, and Pralaya, creation, preservation, and dissolution. But he is above this show, ever unaffected. Coming to the human level, we see that human beings want certain things to emerge and grow. In the case of a child, its actions are motivated by unconscious desires. But as a child grows, conscious desires come in and form a part of its mind. If the endless desires are left to themselves, life will be very complicated. So there is the necessity of directing and shaping our desires. This is called education. That is why we begin to teach the child, do it this way, don't jump, don't go there. We direct our desires, we train our desires, otherwise the man becomes jumbled. However, the mind continuously brings desires. Why does man involve himself with endless desires? Why isn't he satisfied even though he knows that maybe 1% of his desires can be fulfilled? The metaphysical answer, according to Vedanta, is that man's true nature is a total reality, an all-comprehensive reality. That is why, in his very nature, he cannot remain satisfied with little. Man more and more wants totality, the totality of knowledge, of wealth, of health, of happiness. Unconsciously, he or she craves that totality. Vedanta says, when you consciously realize this meaning of desire, you have come to a true spiritual life. You know then that this satisfaction of desires cannot be accomplished effectively by pursuing desires in a piecemeal, fragmented, and dispersed way. You have to ask and understand what the totality is. That totality is God or our true self. Our desires show that we seek God all the time, but we do not know it. Really speaking, it is the desire for God that impels us to seek what is not God. It is a contradiction. It is a self-contradiction, and that is why it is called Maya. That which cannot be explained even though we see it. The total fulfillment of desires is possible when you have reached God, when you have understood your own spiritual nature. When you have touched your divine nature, you do not ask for little things, just as a multimillionaire does not run for a few coins. But we cannot all of a sudden understand that impulse of God in us. We have to encounter karma as best we can. When you are born as a man, you cannot be free from desires. You cannot simply say that you do not want this or that you cannot. You have to grow, and that growing process is important. The question then becomes how we can encounter karma in such a way that we become free of it. And here comes in the picture the idea of nishkama karma. The karma, the work without desire. Actually, in an apparent way, nishkama karma, this word, is a contradiction in terms according to the dictionary. This is known to ancient teachers of our ancient teachers because they had said that the three desires or eshanas are there. It's called vitteshana, putreshana, and lokeshana or yasheshana, the same thing. That vitteshana means desire for wealth, desire for progeny is putreshana, and lokeshana is desire for fame, are the motive factors of each and every human activity. Either we want wealth or recognition, we want that the world should remember us for a long time to come. Let us not confine the word putreshana only to desire for children. Progeny can also imply a following to keep our name glowing. Without these three motives, no human activity is possible. Because who are unmarried, for them Putreshana does not fit. So Putreshana means we want to remain in this world, in that world. It is said in Upanishad, Atma vai jayate putraha. We want to keep ourselves, some portion of us, as a form in our child. Or unmarried people, we want to make something bigger, kirti. Kirti, something want to, so that the future generation will come. Who has made it? Who is the person behind that, this structure? So this is called that kind of putreshana. The concept of nishkama or selflessness should have not a dictionary meaning but an implied meaning. To perform nishkama karma means that I refuse to be motivated by the above three motives. I will be motivated by a motive that refuses to succumb to these three motivations. This is what nishkama karma means. My motive for work should not make me a victim of these three asanas or desires. This is a negative approach. What could be the positive outlook then? As nothing flourishes in negation or vacuum, a positive motive is also needed. And here is Swami Vivekananda. To convert my life into an endless worship of the divine, this converting of every moment of my life into an endless act of worship of the divine is a positive, life-giving, forceful motive. This motive removes from my mind the other three motives, which I am familiar with. So, the nishkama karma ideal, according to scriptural understanding, means that we develop willpower and determination by which we become free from bondage to our body, mind, wealth, and reputation. We educate ourselves all the time that every moment of our life, every activity of our life must be motivated by a worshipful attitude. This is the special meaning of Vedanta enunciated by Swami Vivekananda. What does Vedanta say? It says that the work is worship. Whole universe is an emanation from the divine. It is the divine everywhere. To see the divine everywhere is the goal. A new dimension is being added to our thinking now. If the whole universe is nothing else but the divine, why can't we educate ourselves to see the whole world as the temple of the divine? So let us open up the doors and windows of the temples present within us and let fresh air come in. Let us thereby outgrow the man-made limitations of seeing the divine only in shrines or other places of worship. The whole world is surcharged with the divine. Let's take advantage of it. As soon as we enter the portals of a temple, an inexplicable peace envelops us and saturates us. We have confined our capacity to see and think of Him within the four walls of a temple of other places of worship. We need to widen our vision. In the Ramakrishna order, we find many of these kind of monks. One of them, two or three, we can just mention here about, it is not possible. Nishchayananda ji is there, Kalyanananda ji is there. Of course, Akhandananda ji, that earlier generation among the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, we know their stories. But I think you know about Swami Muktananda also. Famously, he was known as Bon Baba or Bon Bihari Baba of Kashi. Some of you may, I think, saw him also. I heard from our devotees who went to Benares. So anyhow, but most of the monks of the Ramakrishna order knew him as Bon Bihari Maharaj. For almost all his monastic life, he was attached to a hospital center in Varanasi. known as the Ramakrishna Mission Home of Service. Those people of Varanasi who at one time or another had been treated at our hospital remembered him fondly and called him Bon Baba. Baba means father. Father Bon, or maybe holy man Bon. We use it Baba to mention about our father, and sometimes Baba as a spiritual personality. So anyhow, he worked in the surgical department of the hospital where he bandaged wounds, surgical or otherwise. He worked there day after day, year after year, with the greatest dedication possible. As a result, he developed an extraordinary ability to predict how soon wounds would heal just by looking at them. He was so skilled in his work that the wounds he dressed healed faster than those dressed by others. Some surgeons agreed to perform complicated surgery only on condition that Bon Baba or Bon Bihari Maharaj would take charge of the post-operative care of the patient. He was quite strong physically. He had a winning smile that revealed his childlike simplicity. He was an untiring worker, always ready to serve patients in the right spirit of karma yoga. I am reading these descriptions from Swami Bhaskarananda's book, Life in Indian Monastery. You can find all those things. At all odd hours, often at midnight, patients would be brought to the emergency ward of the hospital and without the slightest sign of displeasure. He would immediately go and take care of them. Many days he hardly had any time to sleep. For him, worship of Shiva, you know, the Benares or Kashi is a place of Shiva. So for him, worship of Shiva and serving the jiva, the common human being, truly was the same. Bon Bihari Maharaj was also extremely fond of visiting the temple of Lord Vishwanath, the Vishwanath temple. Every day, very early in the morning, whether it was in the extreme cold of winter or the torturous heat of summer, he walked nearly a mile from the ashrama, our center, to bathe in the river Ganga, and then went to the temple to offer his worship there. In old age, he developed arthritis in his knees, but that did not deter him from following this daily routine until he became partially wheelchair-bound toward the end of his life. Even when he was almost unable to walk, he would go to the hospital and help dress the wounds of the patients. A brahmachari or helper would take him from the monastery to the hospital by wheelchair, and he would joyfully serve the looking upon them as the veritable manifestation of Shiva. It is often seen that those who work for a long time in a hospital as a nurse or doctor are no longer emotionally affected by the deaths of the patient. But Bon Baba never lost the sensitivity of his heart. He had great sympathy for the bereaved families of patients. In addition to this, great dedication in serving patients. It was his loving and compassionate heart that endeared him to all who came in contact with him. So here is a practical demonstration. We can come now to the next point. This idea of karma yoga or work is worship, does it satisfy us emotionally? As we know, every human being has 4 faculties: feeling, thinking, willing, and action. The faculty of rationality or thinking is the activity of the brain. The capacity to feel is the faculty of the heart. We should become people with broad hearts and profound intelligence. The third faculty given to human being is ingenuity. That is, as an individual, I have my own convictions and understanding. If someone asks me to do something, I can do it only after I am convinced. Then there is that endless desire to know the unknown. That is how human beings have done so much progress in the fields of science, technology, art, medicine, and the like shows that we are dissatisfied with the present. This dissatisfaction, sometimes we call it divine dissatisfaction, is nothing but a desire to know the true nature of everything. With this background, we should think of nishkama karma and karma yoga. An attitudinal change is what is needed. That's how we convince ourselves of the ideal of work and worship, or work as worship, or work is worship. 3 stages are there. In the beginning, a spiritual aspirant both works and worships. Then he learns to do his work as worship. Eventually, he gains the conviction that work is worship. In that connection, we can say something about Swami Madhavananda ji. He was one of the presidents of our Ramakrishna order. It happened like that. It is again from that book, same book. That Swami Nirjarananda, also known as Mohit Maharaj, was then the manager of the Calcutta Advaita Ashrama. The following incident occurred on one occasion when he had come to Belur Math to discuss some important matter with the General Secretary, Swami Madhavananda. I think all of you may know that our headquarters of Ramakrishna is situated in Belur Math, near Kolkata, West Bengal, India. So anyhow, from the Kolkata, that Nirjarananda Maharaj or Mohit Maharaj, he went to visit the then General Secretary, Swami Madhavananda. Swami Madhavananda was very regular in his habits. Every evening after sunset, he would close the door of his room and meditate for 2 hours. At that time, nobody was supposed to disturb him. Swami Nirjanananda arrived at Belur Math just after sunset and found the door of Swami Madhavananda's room closed. So he decided to wait outside the door until the Swami finished his meditation. After 2 hours, the door was opened and he entered Swami Madhavananda's room, saluted him, and explained why he had come to see him. Swami Madhavananda then said to Swami Nirjarananda, Mohit, in his pre-monastic name, Mohit, as he was younger, so calling in his nickname, Mohit, in the future, if you have to see me in connection with any business that's as urgent as this, don't hesitate to push the door open and enter my room. You can disturb me even if I am meditating. To me, there is no difference between work and worship. Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi once praised the spiritual potential of young Swami Madhavananda. He was the disciple of Holy Mother, saying, he is as precious as the tusk of an elephant plated with gold. So he was a erudite scholar, at the same time a great monk. So the tusk of elephant plated with gold. Swami Madhavananda, a karma yogi par excellence, later became the 9th president of the Ramakrishna order. While he was the general secretary, Swami Madhavananda for a while suffering from a severe attack of eczema. The eczema gradually developed a weeping character and spread all over his legs. It was no longer possible for him to work at his desk sitting on his chair. But that didn't stop him from doing his usual work. With his legs stretched out on a freshly cut banana leaf, he would sit in his office and go on working as usual. Unfortunately, for years, no medicine was of any help until the new drug hydrocortisone became available in India. This medicine cures Swami Madhavananda's skin problem. Even there was a Maharaji writing that there's an orderly named Tiwari in his office. He had worked there for many years. Once he said to a senior Swami, I have been working here in Belur Math for a long time, but I have never seen a monk as exalted as Swami Madhavananda. So work is joy also. In this connection, we can talk, can say another about one Swami also, about the detachment. That Rudranandaji, it is about Rudranandaji, that the power of the detachment, and power to attach also. When you are working, some work you may not like, there you need power of attachment, and some are there that you like that, but you need to work with different kind of work now. So now you need power of that detachment also. So anyhow, Rudranandaji, it is about Rudranandaji. So again, let us read a little bit from that book. So very nicely, dramatically he wrote. That's why I have to follow. So it was the home of Chennai Gaundar in the town of Nadi in Fiji. Chennaya had a special guest in his home that night, Swami Rudrananda, the head of the Ramakrishna Mission Center in Nadi. It was midnight. Chennaya, that person, had been sleeplessly tossing and turning in his bed for the past 3 hours, greatly perturbed by a catastrophe that had happened to the Ramakrishna Mission Center the day before. Its only residential building had been gutted by fire. In the silence of the night, Chennaya could hear the regular, peaceful breathing of Swami Rudrananda sleeping in the next room. The Swami had to come and stay in Chennaya's home because the fire at the ashrama had made him homeless. Many years before, the Swami had come from India at the invitation of the Indian immigrants in Fiji and had started a high school in Nadi. The school was for the children of Indian laborers working in the sugarcane plantations owned by the British. The very idea of laborers getting educated alarmed the plantation owners. They feared that the educated children of the laborers would seek other kinds of employment, creating a short supply of laborers in the future. That's why, overtly and covertly, they and their accomplices had for years created problems for the Swami. The suspicious fire in the ashrama building appeared to be a case of arson. While sleeplessly tossing and turning in bed, Chennaya remembered how hard and lovingly the Swami had worked over the years to build the ashrama and to get the school going. Chennaya had always been an ardent supporter and admirer of Swami Rudrananda. When the Swami's beautiful ashrama was burned down to the ground, he invited the Swami to stay in his home as an honored guest. With great anxiety, Chennaya wondered how long it would take the Swami to rebuild the ashrama. The whole night he was unable to sleep because of worries about the Swami. Yet he was amazed that the Swami himself slept so peacefully in the next room. It was as though the destruction of the ashrama building, for which the Swami had labored so hard and for so many years, did not affect him at all. Chennaya had read that a karma yogi is not attached to anything. He performs action without expecting any fruits. Chennaya not knew, without any doubt, that Swami Rudrananda was a true karma yogi. At daybreak, Swami Rudrananda, as was his habit, got up from bed, showered, did his meditation, and came out of his room for breakfast. He looked fresh and well rested. When he saw Chennaya, he said enthusiastically, "Chennaya, it looks like we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have to start building the ashrama again. I am sure Sri Ramakrishna will help us." With the financial cooperation of his friends and well-wishers, Swami Rudrananda was able to rebuild the ashrama. The new building was much better than the previous one. It was made of cement concrete and was completely fireproof. The high school run by ashrama is now considered one of the best in Fiji. So in this connection, another giant from the Western world, that Brother Lawrence. We should mention his name also in connection. there is a beautiful book that the practice of the presence of God. There's a beautiful book. So the most effective way Brother Lawrence had for the work he had to do is a unusual work, so-called non-spiritual task, the dishwashing in his monastery. Yet, through the experience, he discovered some insight into the spiritual disciplines while doing that work also. Sometimes he used to say that while cleaning the dishes, I feel that same calmness, that same absorbedness in meditation or in prayer. This was some two quotation from him. I can mention here that we ought not to be weary of doing little things for the love of God, who regards not the greatness of the work, but the love with which it is transformed. It is performed. That our sanctification did not depend upon changing our works, but in doing that for God's sake, which we commonly do for our own. That is, that it was lamentable to see how many people mistook the means for the end, addicting themselves to certain works which they performed very imperfectly by reason of their human or selfish regards. So we found many ways, some ways, to encounter karma fruitfully. Again, there is another way. The way that is of knowledge. The way of a person who has been more conscious of his own nature as the ever-free, pure spirit. He has read that man's self, the human being, he read that man's self is not really a fraction of the infinite spirit, because that infinite spirit cannot be fragmented. Man's true self is infinite and as such is eternally unattached. Therefore, a man of knowledge tries to feel that really he is the witness. He tries by contemplation to separate his actions, his senses, and the instruments of his actions from his true nature. His perspective is that all the activities in nature do not really affect him because he is the self. To be sure, he sees, he eats, he dances, he does these things, but all the time he feels it is a show going on to which he is the eternal witness. Here, there is no question of God or offering the fruits of action to God. Here, he encounters karma by separating himself from Prakriti nature through knowledge. Through inquiry, the way of knowledge also neutralizes karma. He has separated himself from karma by witnessing it. So there is a beautiful verse. Let us conclude our talk with another way of worship that is continuously going on. A realized person, that Shankara, in his famous, the Adi Shankara, Shankaracharya, he composed a beautiful stotra. The name of the stotra is Shiva Manasa Puja Stotra, I think. So, one beautiful, the verse is there. Let us conclude today's talk chanting that sloka, that verse from the beautiful sloka, that stotra. Atmatam girija matihi sahachara pranaha shariram griham pujate vishayapabhoga rachana nidra samadhi sthitihi sanchara padayoh pradakshina vidhi stotrani sarva giro yad yat karma karoti tat tad akhilam shambho tavaradhanam. O Lord, O Shiva, myself thou art. My mind I liken to the Divine Mother, thy divine consort, my vital ears to thy followers, and my body to thy temple. My enjoyments I regard as offerings made unto thee. My sleep is a form of absorption in thee. My wanderings are like circumambulations, while my words are prayers offered unto thee. O Lord beneficent, whatsoever I do, may it all be as worship made unto thee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.